Right, so my next den, again, totally trivial. I'll start off with the cowbell in one channel and quiet 100% volume in one channel, 0% in the other, and I'll slowly change the ratio. And you'll hear something you're all familiar with. It'll move across the stage as I change the amplitude ratio. However, what if I try and do the same thing with time? Okay, this one, I start out with the cowbell about 700 microseconds in front, in the left channel, 700 microseconds in front of the cowbell in the right. And then I slowly reduce that time difference to 0, and then I increase the lead time in the right channel. What do we hear? Again, you hear the cowbell moving across the stage. The brain is now using, stop. The brain is now using the time difference information, which you remember only operates below 800 Hertz or so, to create a sound stage, just as Blumlein defined with amplitude stereo. But if you listen carefully, it's unstable. There's a lack of center fill. The cowbell, instead of moving uniformly across the stage as it did as I changed the amplitude ratio, rushes across the center. The brain is not good at using time information to determine stereo, which is why 99.999% of recordings you listen to are made using amplitude information only. The producer, the engineer, assigns a position in space to a sound source using a pan pot, and then mixes all those sound sources together to give you something which gives you the impression that you were at the original event. That's how I was 20 years ago when I last gave this speech. I was totally a purist. Stereo is about amplitude only information. And then I made this recording. Canadian pianist Bob Silverman performing a Schubert piece in a church in Albuquerque in 1992. This recording was a mistake. We were sponsoring the concert, and my idea was to record Bob live in concert. We had borrowed a cross figure of 8 microphone pair from Manley, all in one capsule, which was we were going to make the recording. But just out of interest, I had set up a pair of outrigger Omni mics, spaced quite a long way apart, which I was taking to a second recorder. So, day after the concert went very well, and I'm listening to the recording that was made from the cross figure 8 mics. And it was mono. And mono? I wasn't monitoring during the recording. So I called up Bob Harley, who was Seraphar's technical editor at that time, and he was actually running the Ampex machine with that mic. And I said, "It's mono." He said, "No, it's stereo." I said, "No, it's mono. It really is." And I said, "What had happened?" And he said, "Well, I couldn't think of anything." I said, "We did the normal test where you walk across the stage, you say, this is the left microphone, this is the right microphone." I said, "What did you see?" He said, "Well, when you said this is the left microphone, it was equally loud in the right channel and vice versa." He said, "I could think of no possible way that could have happened, so I ignored it." Logical,
sounds like Bob. Yep.
Logical positivism in action. and then, look, when getting the mic back, unpacking the mic, what had happened, the power supply had failed, and the mic had switched itself to its default setting, which was coincident omni mics, which is completely useless for stereo. So what I had was a recording made with the outrigger omni mics, which I was recording on a Revox PR99. And the microphones were very widely spaced, about 8 feet. And I knew, as an amplitude stereo purist, that that would be useless. But the interesting thing was, I played this recording to a number of people, played it to Larry Archibald, who owned Stereophile at the time, Bob Silverman, the pianist, and everybody liked it. Why can't we put out the recording from these spaced omni mics? And they said, well, it's not a stereo recording. And I can demonstrate that if I continue playing. We're at 38 seconds in, and I do something catastrophic around about a minute 5. You shouldn't have heard anything at all. What I did was I flipped the polarity of just one channel, and well, no, that was somebody banging upstairs.
Oh, because that's what you heard. Exactly when you said there.
I know, but I flipped the polarity of one channel, and you all know from your experience with amplitude stereo recordings, you can't do that. You can't flip the polarity of just one speaker because it'll sound phasey and woozy, out of phase. The bass will disappear. But with a time stereo recording like this, it makes no difference at all. There's such a big time difference between the signals reaching the two microphones for off-channel sources that you can flip the polarity without having any effect at all. However, it sounds like a real piano, right? Has good bass extension, and we put it out, and it sold pretty well. It was called Concert, and I was castigated on what was in Usenet for my irresponsibility for putting out this recording, because it wasn't a real stereo recording. It was a fake. I should be ashamed of myself. I was doing a disservice to the pianist and to Schubert. And I thought, but it sells. People like the sound of that. I mean, I thought, well, I'm using omni mics, which have good low frequency extension. They have low coloration. And there's something very involving, enveloping. There's a sense of bloom to the sound of the piano in that hall, which, had I used cross figure 8 mics, wouldn't have been there. So that set me back on my heels. I did something wrong, and it turned out to be right. What is going on? Well, what's happening, I think, and this is not an original thought, this was something I heard the late Michael Gerson speak about in 1987. Blumlein's substitution of amplitude for phase at low frequencies in the mid-range works mathematically, but it's still depriving you, the listeners, of some of the information you would need to create your internal models for your brain to operate. And if you think about music, we're listening to pressure waves from two loudspeakers, sound. Our brains are creating an internal model based on those two pressure waves, reflecting something was happening between and behind the loudspeakers. That's really not what's important. What's important